On that note, I think we'll call the meeting to order. Will the clerk take the roll?
Chair Berman,
Here?
Councilmember Burt, Councilmember Holman,
Here.
Vice Mayor Niss.
Here.
3 present.
Thank you. And so this is the regular Finance Committee meeting of Tuesday, August 19th. And the first item on the agenda is oral communications. Has anybody filled out a speaker card?
No.
So we'll move on to action item number 1, which is municipal code changes regarding review of fiscal procedures and role of city auditor, administrative services department's roles and responsibilities, and lapse of appropriations. And does staff have a presentation?
We have a short presentation. Good evening, Walter Rossman, Budget Director. As you mentioned, Chair Berman, these are the 3 topics. Is the role of the city auditor and the review of fiscal procedures. I'm joined today by Harriet Richardson, correct? Yes, who is the city auditor and requested one of those changes. Then we are looking at making some cleanup changes in conjunction with the first item regarding the Administrative Service Department's roles and responsibilities. This relates primarily to finance and accounting procedures and internal controls. And lastly, is the lapse of appropriations, which affects capital and operating budget appropriations. I'll speak in more detail about this later. Looking at the first slide, the city auditor pointed out to us that the responsibilities she has currently under the code is to consult that the Administrative Services Department is requested, or is required actually, to consult with the city auditor regarding finance and accounting procedures. This, however, this code was written in the early 90s and adopted by the council at the time, and today it conflicts with current auditing standards. So what we're bringing here to you today is to remove that section from municipal code, so it's in alignment with auditing standards the auditors is required to follow. And we're asking to make following changes and recommended changes in the ASD department's section of the municipal code. First, is that the ASD is responsible to establish and maintain finance and accounting procedures and internal controls. And this is just a rephrasing of previous statement, of the current statement. Coordinate financial audit activities, these are with of the external auditor with the internal auditor as well. And the department may seek advice if initiated by the ASD from the city auditor regarding any kind of internal controls and procedures. So it's not that we're required to do that, but we may seek to do that. Further, we're asking that the code be aligned with current organizational structure and what that means, renaming the divisions of ASD, such as real estate and stores, printing and mailing, and removing the city's IT function from the ASD responsibility. This happened in 2012, it's adopted with the budget by the council, and we're just cleaning up the code for that. The third change is regarding lapse of appropriations, and let me first talk about the different type of appropriations which we have, which is operating budget appropriations and capital budget appropriations. Currently, code requires that operating budget appropriations be first approved preliminarily, and that happens usually in August or September, first by the Finance Committee and then by the full council. And then when we close the budget, which happens usually with the CAFR, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, early December, going to the council in January for a second time to approve for reappropriation. So we have a huge time lag by the time we actually ask for it initially and by the time it gets finally approved. But usually we appropriate funds to continue existing projects on the operating side. So we're asking to remove that 2-step process and go towards a 1-step process if the ASD director, sitting right beside me, proves and certifies that the funds are available for reappropriations. I think that's a key point for the council to know that these funds are available before you approve that. The second piece is capital budget reappropriations. Currently, the code states that the city council approval is only necessary if after 2 years of approving a capital project, the staff has not spent not even $1 on the project. Otherwise, it gets automatically reappropriated. When we were at the Finance Committee hearings this May, what happened there is council members were asking about projects which were approved in previous budget years, and were asking, so where do I find this in the budget document? Well, there are about 140 projects which you did not find, because we followed the municipal code, and therefore we did not display those. We, however, believe that it's important to not update only the council, but also the community where those projects are, if they're still live, if they're still active, and therefore we're asking to change the code so we can change the way we present the capital budget. So what it would mean is that we would bring, if approved by the Finance Committee and recommended for the Council to approve this change as well, we would then show additional all projects which are active and which have which are ongoing in the capital budget document. That's about 140 projects, extra pages, or maybe even double as much. So the book is going to grow substantially. So we're also considering changing and redesigning the budget document. And what we plan to do there is go back to the PTC, the Planning and Transportation Commission, like we did 2 years ago, and bring forth changes and discuss those with them, because they are responsible for review of the capital budget, in what it's in alignment or in compliance with the comprehensive plan. And then once we have discussions with PTC, come back to the Finance Committee and share with you those changes. So some changes which you need to thinking about is when was the project initially approved? When it actually got started? So give you much more detail than we have provided in the past year. So you'll see those changes forthcoming. I expect to come back to the Finance Committee October, early November, so that we have enough time to get your input and then start the capital budget process and design of the book. That's correct. This is best practice. It's correct. This is a best practice which you see as advocated by GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association, which other cities have been doing, and we actually looked around and made sure that we're in alignment with those best practices. So with that, the recommended motion is on the PowerPoint to adopt those 3 changes in the municipal code for your consideration. And actually to recommend them to the full council for adoption.
Great. Thank you very much, Walter. Harriet, I don't know if you had anything that you wanted to add, or you're just here to answer questions as they come up?
I was primarily here to answer questions if they came up, but I will say that I did provide input to them regarding the changes they made regarding city auditor responsibilities.
Great. Thank you. So with...
I'd move approval of the motion, and maybe then we can discuss it. I'll second that.
Well, we're just getting the ball rolling. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, because thank you. I found this fascinating because I can remember way back when there was a great deal of discussion about the difference between a financial audit and a management audit. And we've almost always done financial audits. That's sort of your dollars and cents, your meat and potato stuff. Management audits are frequently frightening to administration. And so what I've noticed here, if I'm seeing it correctly, do you mind being Harriet tonight?
That's fine.
Is that this more delineates that role than we have done it before. Now, do you see it in that same way? Because I can remember way back when I once discussed a management audit, and the administration was very unhappy with that.
So we use 2 terms, financial audit and performance audit. Financial audit,
Interchangeably, yeah.
we refer to as the external audit of the financial statements. And then performance audit has a broad definition. Some people call them performance audits. Some people say management audits. Some people say operational audits. The term that we use in the auditing standards is performance audits, but it is sort of an interchangeable term, and it can have a very broad scope. So it can have some financial aspects to it, but it's not thought of this in the same way as the financial audit that is the where an opinion is being expressed on the financial statements.
Vice Mayor, yes, I think you made an excellent point in this regard, that currently you have to be in 2 tracks to be able to follow the work that's being done in projects that are currently already approved versus what you're going to see in a proposed budget. So I think your intent is you're saying, well, this is going to now allow us to see what's going on, what's being done, and what hasn't been done from the project perspective. Because for the most part, we give you a figure of what's outstanding, or carryover, we call it, but there's not a lot of detail. So now you're going to see the details. So I think your point is that you'll be able to ask questions. Why is this project that was approved 2 years ago, it's not complete? What's going on? So it does put a little more accountability on the departments and us in front of you in the community to tell the story as to what's going on with the projects.
So that's helpful. I do think, though, and maybe my terminology isn't correct, but frequently those who work for companies like McKinsey and so forth will come in, but theirs is not half as much a financial audit as I see it as a management audit. And they're the ones you often bring in when you want to get rid of somebody. I mean, literal. I mean, I don't mean that in a casual way. That really is what happens in big companies. When they need to do a reorganization and reestablish where everything is going to be, they will bring in a company like that. Now, some of those companies do multiple kinds of audits, but as I see it, and I realize what you're saying, Lalo, that yes, we are tracking it to such an extent that we may say, why didn't this happen? But for the most part, we probably are not really interacting in such a way that we're sending management messages, because I primarily see that as Jim's job or whomever is sitting in that chair. So maybe I'm making too fine a line on it, but because I'm so familiar with those other terminologies and companies that do it, and I don't recall that we've ever, as a city, brought in a company, you know, Booz Allen would be one, or McKinsey or the Boston Consulting, any of those come in, and we've often thought they kind of, bad term, but do the dirty work. And I don't see this in that way. So, just my own opinion.
Well, I think actually we do bring in outside firms also, and then sometimes management actually likes to be able to think of the auditor also as a resource, you know, to actually do a performance audit. You know, sometimes we may not want them to be doing a performance audit. It isn't necessarily because we don't want to do it, but it's a potential redirection of attention in work. Do you know what I mean? And so you're sort of having to reprioritize. But we like to have a relationship with the auditor's office, and we're certainly seeing this with Harriet, where we could discuss saying, you know, here's some areas we'd like to see some work, and rather than bringing in someone in from the outside, we'd like you to do it. But there are times we haven't really brought in McKinsey or Bain or some of those folks, but we often will bring outside assistants to come in and do analysis and support us on changes we want to make in the organization. But I think usually the biggest issue is that it's the auditor may not see it this way, but that we could see generally more potential for a difference of opinion about interpretation around a performance or management audit than we typically would on a financial audit, because, I mean, arithmetic is arithmetic, and it's kind of hard to debate those things. So I think that's why the relationship between the auditor and the organization is an important thing, too, to make sure that you all are getting the benefit of the most important things being attended to and dealt with, and that we're using our resources wisely.
And I would agree with that, you know, kind of fine-tuning it. But there are times when the auditor and management are not in sync with each other. And that probably will happen at some point while you're here, Harriet. It just does. But I think the changes that you've made, in particular the one that indicates that we will carry forward those appropriations, will be very helpful, especially after kind of a disconnect in the spring. This will allow that to happen, so we recall what happened the year before, especially if you didn't happen to be on the Finance Committee and having you know, if you hadn't maneuvered that previously. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen?
Yeah, well, thank you very much for bringing this forward. We always want to be aligned with both transparent and audit independence, and as Marina said, best practices. So thank you for that. When it comes down to the capital budget, I do have some comments on that. I may have mentioned a couple of these, that identifying what year the CIP actually was approved. I think adding that would be a great advantage. Having these all visible from year to year is also a great advantage. It provides more transparency, and it keeps, you know, count.
silly. When you talked about changing the format to some extent, as I read it, you were thinking about getting rid of some of this, maybe the photograph, and moving this over here to save pages. I'm all for, is that accurate for what you were thinking of doing?
What we're thinking about doing for the out years of the capital improvement plan, so not the year where the budget is approved, but the year 2 until 5, to restrict a little bit the information since it's not yet firmed up. It's a plan still, and we felt that potentially we should look into honing that information and refine information once we get it for budget approval. So that was the thinking for the out years of the project, of the plan.
So it seems to me that we were looking at one earlier that had, obvious design elements to it, but it didn't have any design costs associated with it. And even in the formative, it seems like it ought to be like some indication there are going to be those costs, just so that we're aware that, there's going to be this element. We just haven't figured out what it is yet. And also, there's some basic information in these two, well, three, so you'd have to have this one, but in these two boxes, which are impact analysis and relationship to comprehensive plan. But if you don't have this in relationship to comprehensive plan, why is it even being proposed? There needs to be that. Sorry.
And we need to continue having the relationship to comprehensive plan as part of the municipal code. So it requires that the PTC, as you know, reviews the entire capital plan.
Right.
And so we need to definitely have these facts in the book for each page, for each project, so that the PTC can review the CIP.
Okay, I had misunderstood. I thought it was those two boxes you were thinking of, not.
It was
and I
mainly the
misunderstood.
impact analysis, which you have in the middle.
Okay, yeah. And for me, so that includes, for those who can't see, it's like environmental, design elements, and operating. And, you don't expect necessarily at the very, very beginning to have numbers in the chart over here, but I think, again, it needs to be at least eliminated what bodies are going to be anticipated to review something. Like, so if something is in the Baylands, Parks and Rec Commission should be reviewing it. So it's just it's like getting a project off on the right foot. It's having the good groundwork and basis for moving ahead. It's not work that's going to be wasted. It's work that will be continued into the next step and the next step. So it's not work that will be unusable later. And if you have to change the photo or eliminate the photo, even in some of these instances, to get the expenditure chart on the same page, to keep it down to one page, it seems to me that would be doable. Seems to me, but I think all this information is really helpful, and it's just, as things carry forward to the second stage. Thank you for this. As things carry forward to the second stage, again, I just think it's good to have this formative stuff in place, so the next person that picks it up knows what to anticipate. So those, and then these do go to Planning and Transportation Commission, and the full commission will be reviewing the CIP.
That is our intent, to take it to the PTC for review and input, and then come back to the Finance Committee for providing you any kind of changes which we may make.
And schedules allowing, it'll be the full commission?
That's what we're hoping. We have not contacted the chair yet, but we plan to do
Okay.
it in August.
Okay, yeah, full commission would be best. And other notes, hang on here just a second. I think that's it. I guess the really, really important piece here is that we're not just carrying forward projects by rote almost. So this is really an important piece, I think, that you're making the change to here, and I really, really appreciate it. I think it's a very good and appropriate change and responsible change. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I share my colleagues' enthusiasm for the changes. I think they're very positive, from a cleaning up the process standpoint and from a transparency standpoint for the capital budget elements. I just had one question, which is, Walter, you were talking about the operating budget reappropriations and the two-step process that we currently have now, the first step of which occurs in August, September, and the second step in December, January.
Yeah.
And the desire to fold that into a one-step process. When would that step occur?
This would occur in September, most
Okay.
likely, but what happens is currently in August, we are closing out the general fund grant. We still have the external audit review the numbers, obviously September going into October. But by that time, we have a reasonable understanding that the ASD director could certify the CFO that the funds are available for reappropriation.
Great. Well, that was the only question I had. With that, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Aye. That passes unanimously. Thank you guys very much. And we'll move on to item number 2 on the agenda, which is the Micro Enterprise Assistance Program update and discussion regarding the proposed fiscal year 2015 budget and program. Hi.
Hi, Chair Berman, council members, Hillary Gittleman, the planning director. I'm joined by Consuelo Hernandez, who is a fantastic program manager for this project. It's wonderful in a city that's known for entrepreneurship and innovation to have a program that actually demonstrates that those qualities are not limited by income level. That's really the purpose of this micro enterprise program, and Consuelo has been running it well through a pilot project, our first year. She wants to explain kind of what we've done in the year and where we're proposing to go, and we're happy to answer any questions for you.
Thank you, Hillary. Good evening, Chair Berman, Consuelo Hernandez, Senior Planner, members of the Finance Committee. As you might recall, in May, we brought before you as a City Council the budget for the CDBG program. As part of the budget, we requested an additional funding of $150,000 for the second year of the program. And when we came to you in April, we asked that we would use the balance of funds from fiscal year 14 and add that to the $150,000 budget that we requested for 15. And then you asked of us for clarification on how we're proposing to use those dollars. And that's what we have for you tonight, including a little bit of the feedback that we've received over the last 2 months. We've been continuing with the implementation of the program. And we've also met with our community partners, our grant review committee, and our participants, both those that received funding and those that didn't make it to the eligibility list, and or those that submitted an application but did not receive funding. And what we found was that they did have a lot of feedback for us, and we've included that in the report for you. And then what we are also showing you is how the amount that has been expended and or committed, because we issue the grants, but they're on a reimbursement basis or pre-award. So this is just the committed items or amounts. It doesn't show what we actually expended. But essentially the balance from fiscal year 14 is $83,010, with the total budget for fiscal year 15 of $233,000. And on table 3 of your staff report, we're proposing to use that funding, again, to pay for personnel costs, supplies and printing, technical assistance, insurance requirements. That was something that came after we actually met with you in May, and then direct grants of $170,000. And some of the program improvements that we've discussed are extending our outreach efforts to a wider or a broader community. In our pilot phase, we really focused on our existing partnerships with Downtown Streets Team and Palo Alto Housing Corp, and really only at 2 of their site locations. And part of our implementation for fiscal year 15 is to put an ad in the paper, to do a lot more outreach, to get a wider audience in the mix, as long as they income qualify, of course. And so what we're asking the Finance Committee to do tonight is to look at the proposal from staff, ask any questions and any changes that you'd like to see, or we can either incorporate them into the implementation of the program, or you can make a recommendation to the City Council to further discuss it, or simply provide them with an informational report with your decision. So staff is here to answer any questions, and that concludes our staff report.
Great. Thank you very much, Consuelo. I'll open up the colleagues. Any questions?
I'll let Karen go first if she wants. I've got lots of questions too.
Sure, thank you. So we were just talking about carryover, weren't we? So here we are with the $83,000 carryover. So the question I had really, we're on packet page 13, or the staff report page 3. I can appreciate that there can be small grants of $1,000, for instance, or $2,000. I guess I'm wondering what the return is on those, though, because there's a lot of, I don't imagine that the staff time, I know you're looking at streamlining, but I don't imagine that the staff time is that reduced for that small of a project or grant application. So I'm wondering if that's really, is that really worthwhile or effective, or what can you do for $1,000 sort of thing? So that's my first question.
Sure. Thank you, Councilmember Holman. So we've kind of been struggling with that same question as well. All of our community partners actually wanted a minimum grant amount of $500. But the amount of staff time that's required, plus now this additional general liability, $500. So we didn't add that to our recommendations based on the fact that the general liability insurance costs that much. And so we are looking at what the real benefit is. And one of our applicants, their grant amount is for about $2,000. And we're looking at her as an example of what can be done with $2,000 and the amount of staff time that's required, basically purchasing equipment for her to crochet her items and sell them online. And the amount of time that we've spent on that specific applicant has been very little because she already knows what her business model is. Her mentor has taken a lot of the staff time that we normally would have away from us. So the time that we've actually spent on her is very little. So a $2,000 grant in that case is appropriate, and the amount of staff time that we've taken is not that much. Compared to one of our other grantees, their grant amount is a lot higher, and I've had to spend maybe every week about 8 hours on that person. And so it really depends on the nature of their business and the level of readiness. And that's why we figured that if we establish an eligibility list with a tailored training program for the individual, they go out, they receive the training, we provide the funds for the training. When they actually come back to us, the amount of the grant won't matter as much, and staff time will be reduced in that sense because they will be ready to receive the funds at that point.
So I don't remember reading in here that there's a readiness threshold. Maybe I overlooked it, but or maybe it's in the list here. Okay, it's not one that I highlighted, so sorry for that. So how do you utilize that? So how do you, when you're evaluating these, how do you decide? Sorry for the questions, but it's a better way to understand this. How do you decide which ones are really the most benefit for the expenditure, both time and finance?
That's a really good question. One of the things that we identified, and I believe it's in here, is having an interview process where we would receive applications and get a better picture of what their business model and idea is, to give us a better understanding of what it's going to take to help that individual. And part of that includes, and we didn't include all of this in the packet, but it's an assessment of their level of readiness. And it's a series of questions that asks whether they have a bank account, whether they know the structure of their business, if it's going to be a sole proprietorship, an LLC, or what have you. So it's a series of about 10 or 15 questions designed to determine or categorize them into their level of readiness. And each question is assigned a point. Or a series of points, and the higher the number they get, then the higher their level of readiness is.
And I know you're working with the business community too, so are there entities or individuals in the community that are helping to do those evaluations?
Yes. So the Grant Review Committee is essentially the body that will review the applications that come in.
And then another question I had is, these are viewed as entrepreneurial endeavors and startup, kinds of projects. But what about somebody that already has a business, but they could employ, some other element? If they but had $5,000 of funding, they could, upgrade and enhance their website significantly. That would enhance their business model incredibly, or enable some new innovation to their business. What about those people? Are you reaching out to the existing business community, smaller businesses, maybe local independents, smaller than X number of square feet? I mean, however you want to identify that. But are you reaching out to that part of the community as well?
That is part of the community that we're also hoping to reach out to as part of this kind of broader outreach effort.
Because I don't see that mentioned, and I haven't heard it mentioned before.
No, and we have to be very careful in the existing businesses because HUD has thresholds for what the type of individual and business that qualifies as a micro enterprise. So they have to have 5 or fewer employees, and either their business owner has to be a low moderate income individual, or they have to hire somebody that's low moderate income. And we haven't explored that aspect.
Sounds like a win-win-win.
Right, and we haven't explored that second aspect of the program, but we can definitely add that in here and work with our economic development manager more specifically than saying just broaden our outreach. We can actually state that we are going to target businesses that are willing to apply for the funds and then hire a low moderate income individual.
That's something I'm going to want to see specified because, you know, we've heard people talk about the current merchants on California Avenue, for instance, talk about wanting to support the local independent businesses on that street. We're losing them downtown as well. So I'm going to want to see that specifically in this program. And I think there are a lot of businesses would satisfy those criteria. So let's see.
For the most part, in that regard, you would be talking about hiring low-income employees. Probably be the criteria that could be met in order to do that. I don't think for the most part they would be a low-income owner, for example.
But I thought you said that they could have a low-income employee.
That's what I just said.
So, oh, okay.
They would
but
have to
some,
hire.
That would be the big focus.
But some of the business may have low-income employees if they have part-time employees or that sort of thing. So it could be a mix or a combination of those kinds of entities.
That's exactly what I was saying.
Yeah.
It could be on the employee basis. And it could be they either have them or it could be an incentive for hiring.
Yes, yes, yeah, we're on the same page.
So they would actually, if the individual was a part-time employee, then they would have to demonstrate how they're creating a full-time position. So it's either you create a part-time for a low to moderate income individual, or you create a full-time position.
Okay.
From a part-time.
From a, exactly.
I see. Okay, that's very helpful and informative. Hang on, it's, oh, yes. I'd highlighted this too. So on packet page 14, staff report page 4, you're talking about, it is the paragraph right underneath table 3. Excuse me. Ultimately, staff would like to see use this program as a way of engaging the community in this collaborative conversation with the hopes that the community would absorb the program and no longer require the city to administer. Instead, a nonprofit organization with experience in these types of programs would apply for funding to administer the program. Have you identified a nonprofit that might suit these purposes, and is Downtown Streets Team may be interested, or have you talked to anybody? And you know, Downtown Streets Team is such a model for so much, and we all love it so much. It's like I look to them. But have you identified any yet, or are you just kind of like waiting for that to evolve? It's too soon, or whatever you have to say.
Sure, that's a really great question. We haven't given it the level of attention as identifying a specific organization. There is an organization out of East Palo Alto, the Renaissance. I forget the exact name of that organization, but they provide some of those services. Downtown Streets Team, unfortunately, doesn't have the capacity and or all of the elements that are needed to administer this type of program. But this fall, we're actually issuing a notice of funding availability for our next 2-year funding cycle for CDBG, as well as this fall, we're launching the consolidated plan that's required by HUD that's due next May. And in that, we need to determine or identify the needs that this program hopes to fill over the next 5 years. And through that NOFA and the consolidated plan, we hope to identify some organizations there.
That sounds great. The program is an exciting one. I have had a little bit of heartburn about how much money is spent here as opposed to on the HISRAP organizations, but so I've had a little bit of a heartburn with that. Has there been, you know, last night Supervisor Samitian was here, and we were talking about leveraging. Have you tried to leverage this funding with you know, the bid or the chamber or downtown business entities to try to get them to match this amount of money so that the program could be expanded?
And that's actually why one of our goals is to take it out of the hands of the city. When we actually launched the grant review committee in November last year, the first question they had was, where do I send you my check? Like, where can I give you money? And we're not set up to accept private donations. Because of the way that the regulations work, we would have to actually count that as program income and then report it to HUD, and it has a whole other policy issue discussion that needs to take place. So if a nonprofit organization took the program over, then they could very well receive those in-kind or those financial contributions from the private sector.
Not trying to get away with anything here. At the same time, it's because I don't want to violate the parameters of the program. At the same time, if the city gave $5,000, let's just say, I'm just using that number. If the city gave $5,000 to entity A, and a private sector entity gave, A, $5,000, so the money doesn't go through the city, can it be co-sponsoring? So the city is not touching the money, and it's just, you're just leveraging.
Right.
Or is that just too
No, and that's our
gray?
goal. That is our goal, because we are not administering the funds directly. We're issuing them to a nonprofit. Then that collaboration would work without it causing a lot of policy issues on the city side.
Well,
But I'm saying now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm saying now, could you not have, just that. It's like
Could the
ci-
recipients
city-
receive direct donations? Is what you're
Yes,
asking,
exactly,
if I understand
exactly.
correctly. So like the
The
person
city
who-
gives, yeah.
Yeah.
The city gives this, and the other entity gives this, and all the money gets pooled together at the recipient's end.
No, it would create the same policy issue.
Really?
Right, because we have grants agreements with them, and then there's a clause about the program income. So they would actually be, they grow through the seed funding that we've provided them. After their one-year agreement, if they have a partnership with a private donation or through the private sector, then they wouldn't have to report that program income to the city anymore.
Hands-free for a year.
Right.
Okay.
It's important, you just had this discussion about auditing. The program does get audited. We have the auditors in our office now or recently, and so, they would find something like this, and, so we're trying to design a program where we provide this seed funding for 1 year and make it as supported as we possibly can so they succeed and they go off and do their own thing with donations or with income from their business idea.
Thank you for that. I don't want, my intention is not to try to elude the program, it's trying to enhance the program, and certainly within the parameters of the program, but it's helpful to know what those parameters are and what guidelines we have to work within and what strictures there are. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. This is a really interesting program, and one of our objectives in this effort was also to demonstrate that CDBG program can be used in different ways that hasn't been explored, not just by Palo Alto, but by other municipalities in Santa Clara County. This funding, as it's categorized, can actually also be used as leverage for an opportunity fund. It's an individual development agreement that's issued to the youth to save for college. Cities in California don't use the funding for that, but others in the nation have. So that's a potential that we might see as an identified need later this fall for the program. Welcome.
And I'm not trying to single anyone out.
Yeah.
I just thought that was a very interesting comment to make.
Well, thank you, Councilmember Niss. That's why we're here tonight. The outcome of that discussion at the council was a recommendation that we do this check-in with the Finance Committee. That's right.
Okay. So,
Sorry, I think it might be easier if you look at your packet for tonight's agenda item and not, I believe it's on page 2 of the staff report.
Table 1.
Yes.
What it is where the money went.
Mhm.
outcome. I think, so this,
That's the outcome, but that doesn't tell me, I want to know what the results were. You loaned the money to the hairstylist, you loaned 15,000, what's happened?
Sure, so that's actually one of the reasons why we couldn't give you
Is
a
it in
full.
attachment A and I'm
No,
just
it's
not
not.
seeing
No, it's not. It's not contained in,
Thought I'd
it's,
lost it.
I'm sorry about that. It's not contained in your actual packet. One of the issues that we've had in the implementation is the delay as a result of the requirement of the general liability insurance. So we have only allocated or actually reimbursed one of our MAP grantees thus far.
Okay, so there really are no results so far.
Right, there aren't.
That's just what I needed to hear. So I forgot to turn my mic on. So I'm guessing that in some ways, again, looking at best practices, that this is, I don't know, did this come out of any of the micro programs that have gone to other countries, for example? The micro grants that have gone, particularly in Africa, that have been extraordinarily successful, and which have many nonprofits in this country supporting them. The Women's Fund does that, for example. So is this in some ways based on that kind of program, that if you give a small amount of money, you allow them a great opportunity to expand or be successful or support themselves and so forth? You know, what is the wonderful program that?
Kiva?
That uses animals. The heifer? Yeah, which I've always thought was a fascinating program. Yeah, that's one of my favorite.
I appreciate it.
Well, I've always admired that and given those as gifts, because they always indicate in their wonderful brochures, if you give a goat, you will support a family of 5 for whatever length of time. So I was really intrigued by this, and I think it's a great idea. What I'm interested in saying is, where does it go? Because for all of our programs, they need to be results oriented. So we need to know at the end that even though it's a small amount of money, that, you know, as whatever council member that was said, it was a wise investment given a very limited number. I was trying to think, what do you do with $15,000 as a hairstylist? Or fine art and jewelry online? I guess that's.
If I
You know.
can jump in with an observation.
Please.
I know we don't have, the results of the whole program yet, but the process that Consuelo has set up involves counseling with these grantees during the
I saw that
process.
in your other report, right, yeah.
So in a sense, although we don't have the results, we have already achieved some results. These individuals have developed a business plan, they've worked with their mentors, their experience in the business world and their understanding of what's involved in operating a business has increased dramatically. And so I think our intention is to grow that program to try and touch more people in the coming year and make sure more people apply and then get the benefit of that counseling.
That's terrific.
Let alone
Sort of
actually-
your mini MBA but I think that kind of support, and again, on that second page that you wrote in here, which was people learn better in groups, and I thought that was very powerful, the cohort programs and so forth. And there's, you know, great value in that kind of support to someone who's attempting to start out. So I was glad to see that. It'll be fun to follow this. And there are, something mentioned, quarterly reports from the recipients?
That's correct. So right now, I talk to almost all of them on a weekly basis, but eventually, when they're off and running, then they're only required to report to us quarterly. But I can tell you that they're very, they like talking to staff, and they like letting us know,
I'll bet.
you know, oh, I went to the county and submitted my paperwork, you know, those types of things. So it's
Yeah.
really exciting on staff side to be able to share that with them. And I think one of our grantees, he said he feels like a little bird, and he's been tossed out of the nest. I think he used that analogy, and it was really nice to hear that. So
Yeah, no, it's a big step, I would guess.
I think maybe this is stretching it a little, but I think it's a good experience for the staff and the grantees, but also for the mentors who are working with these individuals. When we had the recognition ceremony last year, some of them mentioned just what an incredibly wonderful experience it had been meeting and working with these individuals. So.
Oh, it's a great way to share not just your money, but to share your expertise and your mentoring and so forth. Yeah, it's great. What do we need to do, Chair? listen to you first and then.
And then I'm sure there'll be a motion. So I have a couple of questions. I'll quickly follow up on the mentoring aspect. I saw my dad participate through his business school in mentoring a nonprofit about a decade ago and helping them get up and running in the business plan and the financials, and he loved it, and it was very beneficial for the nonprofit. And in my day job, I actually just got an invitation today to submit an application for a similar type program. The application is due in a week, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to put it together by then. But it's great, there's so many people in our community with experience and knowledge, and a lot of human capital to give in addition or in place of financial capital. And so it's really neat to see our community members step up. I wanted to know what does a hairstylist plan to spend $15,000 on? What was in that proposal?
Good, I'm glad you pushed that. I've been dying to know.
I saw it, and I was quite curious. Yeah.
Because it's the biggest grant.
Right, it is the biggest grant. So her budget included the rent for the space.
Oh, so to actually
Yes.
have her.
Yes,
Okay.
and she actually works part-time now for a salon here in Palo Alto, part-time, but she's not allowed to have her own clients. So she gets the walk-ins, and she doesn't get to maximize on her commission, and so she doesn't have the funding or the capital to pay for the rent. So a portion of it is for that, and then she's required to provide all of the supplies for her station. So any machines, any supplies, again. There's this one perm machine that she purchased, and so I worked really closely with her in identifying the best. And her mentor actually did a really good job of helping her identify the exact items that she needs for that. She'd also requested some funding for the clothing that she has to wear as a stylist, so more like a uniform that she doesn't have the funding to provide for herself.
And you'd mentioned that there was one, and I don't want you to, I'm not insinuating that it's this one, and I don't want you to necessarily say which one it is, but that you were spending up to 8 hours a week on working with one individual grantee?
Yes, and I think it's a sense of insecurity. And really it's a matter of just listening. I think sometimes they just want comfort in knowing that they're going in the right direction. So it's been a lot of that. And now we've changed it so that there's an email exchange instead of a conversation every day.
I was going to suggest
Or every-
that
Yes.
as you scale up to possibly 25 grantees,
Right.
you might want to reset the expectations a little because there aren't
Maybe
400
some check sheets.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, exactly. There aren't 200 hours in the week that you can be spending on this. Or in general, 200 hours in the week. Is this meant to be, or is it stipulated that this is only a one-year grant, or can people reapply for additional funds the following year?
So the way we've set it up is that each individual is capped at $15,000. So if they requested maybe $4,000 the first round, they are eligible to apply for more if the funding is available. But they would have to demonstrate what they've done with that the funds have actually helped them establish the business, and then what they would need the additional funding for.
Okay. And so, I think this program is fantastic. I think it gives people an opportunity, an opportunity to be entrepreneurial, who might not be in the place to necessarily knock on doors at Sandhill and get funding that way. It's a whole different group of entrepreneurs. I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't a little uncomfortable with the fact that, we're essentially scaling up from one grantee who's received funds to looking at 25 grantees, in 1 year. That's pretty rapid growth of the program without necessarily having a lot of, evidence based on what's happened over the past year. And another question that I have, I guess, is, which you kind of helped answer in answering the first question, but you're looking at giving out $170,000 in grants, I think, this upcoming year. I'm assuming you're not planning on coming back and applying for, or asking for $233,000 again next year for the program. I imagine it'll be closer to the $150,000 that it's been. So, are you keeping in mind how that's going to scale back significantly when you don't have those funds that have moved over from 2013, and how you're going to handle that.
So yes, we have taken all of that into consideration, and I can tell you where the 25 came from. When we initially launched the program in December, we actually received 26 applications of people interested in the funds. From those 26, we only identified 11 that we felt could really move forward into the next. And of those 11, only 7 submitted an application.
Okay.
And so
Oh, that's
that's why we kind of picked the 25 as our number, assuming that we were actually going to receive more than 25 applications of people that are interested in the funding, and then we can narrow those down to actually create a cohort of 25, and each one will have a different type of technical assistance program and what have you.
But you guys are, but I mean, obviously you factored in that next year there's going to be less money than there is this year.
Yes.
Okay. In all likelihood.
That's the time we can start working on this nonprofit partner who can start picking up the program.
It's a time, as Karen said, to leverage what Supervisor Samiti had mentioned last night.
There you
Yeah.
go.
He suggested starting early.
He did.
Don't forget.
He did. Okay. Well, I don't think I have any additional questions. Karen?
Yeah, I did, and it goes to Vice Mayor Niss's earlier question about outcomes. So I guess it's when we have not much on the agenda, we can get into the weeds here. But
We don't have to be here all night.
we don't have to, but it's not even 8 yet quite, so. And the baseball game was rained out, so, or at least rain delayed. I don't know where it is now, Lalo, you can tell me. But you know, the last one, for instance, baseball and softball umpires. It seems, I don't see that as an enterprise. I'm not understanding how that is. So when this comes, and you don't have to go into detail about this now. Don't want to put you on the spot or that individual on the spot either. But when this comes back the next time, when it goes to council, if you could describe outcomes, not just purpose or business type, but outcomes. Like, so add a column. Okay? That would be most helpful. And if colleagues agree to, I would like to see this program expanded to local businesses. And you're not asking for a motion here, but just as, you know, update and discussion, but would you like a motion, or what's your intention here?
I think we'd be happy to take that suggestion and add it to the bullets here on page 3 as something we'll encompass in the modifications to the program, right?
Yes.
So an additional column to satisfy Liz and me.
And adding on to that, because you talked about those quarterly reports, so that's a good way to incorporate that, so that we sort of know what's going on with that.
I was, again, because, I mean, I think it's a good point, and I thought I remembered at some point previously, and maybe I'm mixing my programs that we fund, but did you guys at some point provide one-pagers on the different applicants, or I might be thinking of something else? Maybe we haven't seen a lot more detail from these grantees.
We did prepare one-pagers, and I believe it was in the invitation for the award ceremony that we held in April.
Okay.
I believe that's when we sent it to council.
Because, you know, I agree with Karen and Liz that seeing some, you know, information on results as results occur, you know, would be helpful. And, you know, frankly, I'm not even sure if an extra column would accomplish that. I mean, I don't know if you can fit that level of detail into a column, so it might have to be something a little, you know, even more, you know, contextual and robust, to give us some sort of sense of how things are going.
Well, Jim's always looking for more things to announce. If we have a really successful, you know, you can add it to city manager comments, right?
That's exactly what I was going to recommend. One of our grantees actually received her membership to the Chamber of Commerce.
Oh, cool.
And she had to go and present before the board and talk about her business and her role in the program.
Great.
And then she actually formally received her membership. And she's been to 2 events, and she's doing really well. And she's the one that we've issued some funding to.
Great.
So maybe that's something that, you know, city manager could announce, and maybe we could invite her to a city council meeting to, you know, speak for a couple minutes, so, great.
I know at the county, whenever there was a substantial amount put into someone either, those are more dramatic, they're usually recovering from, you know. Yes, they usually recovering from dual diagnosis or whatever it might be, and frequently they've been in jail as well. But we did this as a as a program. And I don't suggest we do all this, Jim, I really don't, but I think Karen's thought is very good. Ours were real tearjerkers, and I don't think you're looking for that, but I think it's great for a community to know that something quite different from what we normally do is going on out there, and this is quite different. Again, I was going to ask, any other communities you know that are using this at all? The micro...
Not the way we've modeled it. no.
Yeah, so it's different. So good. Write it up for Western City. Why don't you do that?
City Hall as garage.
Yeah. Truly, I mean, that's the kind of thing that gives you some really good press. And if it's really different, they will pick up something like that. Or, you know, let the league know about it. They might like you to present it at a meeting. Yeah, you know, get the word out. Because I think that's what really makes a big difference is don't hide that good work under anything. Just let people know about it. For the most part, they think we're doing all kinds of other things. Let's let them know we're doing something very good.
Thank you, Councilmember Nuss.
Last thing, too, is you talk in the staff report, you talk in the staff report about how you're reaching out and stuff, but and working with the Grant Review Committee and the business community. It'd be nice to have a little bit more detail about that. Like, how are you reaching out? Like, what specifically are you doing? Like, reaching out, you know, what's that mean? You know, how are you, are you distributing anything to the local businesses, like through utility bills or anything like that? What are you doing? So, if you give a little bit more detail about that, that would be really helpful.
Sure, I'll add that in for the next time.
Appreciate it.
Is there, following up on that, I mean, is there a social media element to that strategy? I mean, because, you know, I was thinking about who are you reaching out to? I mean, you know, you could...
Facebook and Twitter?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you're trying to reach out to individuals. You could put it in the Chamber of Commerce. You know, they have their weekly email that they send out seeking applications, but that really goes to other businesses and probably not necessarily the people that you guys are really trying to target as applicants for this program, unless you say, do you know somebody who you know, would apply, could be a way. But, you know, I think a lot of entrepreneurial people with not much funds are on Twitter, you know, trying to leverage free you know, social media opportunities and that kind of stuff. So
Crowdsourcing going on.
Exactly. So there's
Did they go with the megaphone at Linden Plaza? Wouldn't that
that could work. You know, people. I'm gonna stop myself there. So anyhow, yeah, I'd be curious to hear more about that. So you don't need a motion from us. You've got our suggestions.
You want our blessing?
I think they've got it. I think.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to run and get my daughter, so can you give me an idea of when we're meeting again?
Well, that was the.
That
If
was
you give
part
us
of the-
10 more seconds,
Okay.
can you give us?
See that.
But I mean, I think the answer is going to be
That
Yes.
first
September
meeting in
16th.
September?
Yeah.
Okay. September 16th. Good.
So,
And I'm not sure I'm available. I'll take this and I'm not sure I'm available that night.
okay.
Is that a different night than we anticipated, or is that already on the calendar?
That's on your calendar.
Yes.
My phone just went dead, so
So,
that's on the calendar now.
correct.
Okay.
It's the regularly scheduled second Tuesday of the month, or third Tuesday of the month, sorry. The one area that I think you might want to consider as a committee, there was a desire to have all four of you for the inventory audit update, and that is the same night of the inventory audit update.
Yes.
So it's just to remind you.
Yes, so let us know.
I'll check. I can't remember if it's that. I know one of these dates was like, oh.
guys are
So
making this
I'll check and see which one. And then the other one is, last time I inquired and had a little bit of feedback from city manager about the animal shelter, still isn't scheduled here anywhere.
We are working on that still. I mean, we're in the process of doing that. I don't think we're ready to go to the
And yeah,
But
just because stuff isn't on here doesn't mean that it won't get on here. I think it's just that.
Right,
We'll add it to
it's
the
just
pending.
having a target, or yeah, at least add it in the pending, yeah.
Okay.
Where's the
We could
pending?
leave it-
Oh, up there. Yeah,
we're
definitely do
still
that.
out to different stakeholders and groups right now, just trying to get ready for how we come back.
It's to be scheduled, kind of thing, so we'll do that.
Parking lot's what we call it sometimes.
Sure. The one item that is not listed on 10.7, we have the use of gas cap and trade compliance revenue from utilities on that night.
Okay,
Okay?
great. So we'll plan on having a meeting we'll plan on having a meeting all these nights, but
Now that people in the community are suggesting they have ideas for us for Finance Committee, that could be interesting.
things always pop up. So no shortage of things to discuss. Jim, that's, you and I will chat about that.
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much, Lalo. This meeting's adjourned.